Not everybody likes them, but they don't care.
Hi, I'm Carl Bates of BBC and Millwall I Follow. You're about to listen to Millwall's No One Likes Us Talking Gary Staff discussing Millwall, the Championship, and a bit more with a multi-talented recording artist, YouTuber and Ipswich Town podcaster, that is Benjamin Bloom, who also regularly visits the Den. Enjoy.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to the No One Likes Us Talking podcast special. With me today is Benjamin Bloom. If you don't already know Benjamin is a huge football fan, especially the Championship, where he travels up and down the country watching as many games as his long-suffering girlfriend, Shaylee, will allow him to get to. Benjamin then video blogs them on his YouTube channel, which is simply titled Benjamin Bloom, under the banner I Have Just Witnessed. These are normally recorded from his car straight after the game. Recently the format has changed to a more live and daily football update, covering all four divisions during the lockdown. Benjamin is a massive Ipswich fan and was formerly the lead singer in the band Rosalita, which I will ask him about later. So I first discovered Benjamin Bloom when he did a live I've Just Witnessed on the Millwall versus Derby game during the 17-18 season, and I've been a follower ever since. Welcome to the show, Benjamin, and thank you for coming on the show.
You're very welcome, Gary. What an introduction! And I went to so many games that season, couldn't actually remember which would have been the first Millwall one I actually covered. But I have a handy guide here of all those results, and it seemed like I was at Millwall quite a lot that season by the looks of it.
Yeah, you were, and I think even someone, when it came to the Fulham game towards the end of the season, were quoting it's the Benjamin Bloom derby towards the end of the season.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, from my point of view, I just kind of transitioned from because on the YouTube, I started off and I was just doing Ipswich games, and then it was around that Christmas time I started to branch out and do other games. I got quite lucky actually, because I did Sheffield Wednesday and Wolves, and Ruben Neves scored from outside the box, and Wolves went 100 points clear or whatever they were doing that season. It got a load of views, and then the way it just worked out from sort of working in London, and Millwall always seemed to be on a Tuesday or handily sort of place that I was able to just get to a lot of their games, and so began the kind of he's an undercover Millwall fan accusations that I get all the time.
Oh, that's great. What made you? Well, obviously that was a good season for us, finishing just 8th outside the Championship playoffs. But what made you, apart from obviously being London, like you just said, what made you love us a little bit like that season? You had a big.
Well, I mean, I went to Millwall for the first time actually that season. You'll remember Ipswich's glorious 4-3 win when we didn't go near the goal for about the last 30 minutes and then scored a last minute winner in classic McCarthy fashion, if I'm allowed to mention old Mick on a Millwall podcast. I know he's not the most popular with you guys, not the most popular with Ipswich guys. What's the view on McCarthy nowadays at Millwall?
Personal. I know we had that last season where we were knocking on the door, had a good cup run, which yet again took our attention away from the league. Went down that season, and then obviously he went off to Ireland. But before that season, you can't say really that too much about him. He formed a very good team. And in typical Mick McCarthy style, they ground out results. And to be honest, sometimes, and if you look at some of the managers that followed, okay, we had Mark McGee and Kenny Jackett after, but some of the in-between managers after Mick McCarthy, it was a case of, dare I say it, a bit like Ipswich, better the devil you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's almost like the longer we're without Mick, and the further we drop down, the better manager he kind of seems. But yeah, it certainly can be a divisive character. Where I think there's a sense with Mick, once he's done with you and he's moved on, and I've spoken to Millwall fans about it before, and a few of them said, oh well, he got what he wanted. He wanted to get into that Ireland job. And I think there is a bit of a sense that he is a good manager. We all know he's a good manager, but that he does And rightly so, he does what's right. He does what's right for Mick, doesn't he? But I've forgotten what the initial question was, Gary. We were talking about the
17-18 season, weren't we? Just what was your favourites? Obviously, Tim Cahill come back that season, and it was that season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was what I was going to say. That I hadn't actually even been to Millwall or to the Den until that season, so I didn't really understand. I didn't understand the club, and I didn't understand what a unique club it was as well, because my kind of exposure to Millwall had been from watching, sort of Match of the 70s documentaries about when Ipswich. Well, when Ipswich went there in the, it's in folklore, the 6-1 FA Cup quarter final, and the players having to come off the pitch, and all the Ipswich fans being terrified, and all the Ipswich players being terrified, and you just have this idea in your head about, hooligans and, Millwall being a rough place to go, and I sort of followed it from afar, and when I went there, I found it kind of found the complete opposite, really.
We are very passionate. We do love our club. We do make it scary. We're not going to say that. You remember the Fulham game, which you said it's probably one of the best atmospheres. Okay, we lost 3.
Oh, amazing.
The start of that game was still makes me have goosebumps. How good that game.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So, I like it when a club has got an identity. Do you know what I mean? And the identity. It's really great with somewhere like Millwall, where the identity goes through the supporters, the manager, and then what's expected of the players on the pitch. And there's a real sense of these working class roots. Even around the Den, you see it's a industrial area where people expect that you go to work, you show up, you do your job, you put effort in, and you don't mess around. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And we expect that. And we, as a working class team, we pay our weight. We work hard a week. We get our wages. We pay the players' wages, and we expect what we put into our day to come out on that pitch. And 9 times out of 10, our players show it. And if a player doesn't, they soon find out about it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I liked. Initially about the game. I just like the honesty of the fans. There's that, I'm not claiming to be any kind of celebrity, but I get recognised at football stadiums from doing YouTube. And generally, if I get recognised at Millwall, people are so kind. And, I'll have people like tap me on the shoulder during the game and, say something. And there's this sense of humour as well. Like I had this guy literally leap over 2 seats. It was at the West Brom game, the really windy game earlier this season.
Yeah, we lost.
And he said, Ben, if you praise that performance, I tell you what, I'm coming for you. He wasn't happy, but he cared about what I was going to say about his team. So, I love the atmosphere there. I like the real identity of the club, and not to be too sad about it. It feels like Ipswich used to have an identity of being admired and playing football, and these 2 great England managers, and doing it the right way and the Ipswich way and being welcoming, and it's I just think it's really alluring, especially as a neutral fan, when a club has got that identity, and I dare say as well, a little bit of business savvy as well. You know what it's like. You're working on YouTube. You go and cover Millwall. You get a good, good reaction. You get good comments. You get subscribers, and so you go back. It's that simple. And one other thing, Gary, what I'm really privileged to do, being neutral and following the Championship, is I get to join in other teams' fun. So when a team is a big story, I'm well known in Sheffield United because I was there covering that incredible run the next season. So I'm always lucky to be able to vicariously, especially given my team's been so kind of, limp for the last 15 years. So I have this privilege, and, there was a real, I've got the results up in front of me. This run that Millwall had from February all the way through to that Fulham game that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Just incredible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 unbeaten for a team promoted from League One with no parachute payments, pushing for the playoffs. It was just a brilliant story, wasn't it? That run, and I kind of fell in love with it a little bit.
Yeah, I think we all did. And when we were at that Fulham game, we'll talk about that now if you want. We should have had a goal early on in that game. Shouldn't have been disallowed. The dear friend up front for Fulham, his name releases me from now, but he probably should have taken an early bath early in that game as well for elbowing someone in the face, which is what obviously got what Timmy wound up, and he ended up getting a ban from the back of that game as well. But that game, from the moment I walked in, to be honest, I can tell you a story about that game. I was working at Chiswick at the time. I still work there now, but not now. I work in my front room now. But I got on the train from Chiswick, and I've got like my Saturday afternoon playlist in my ears going on, and with Rocking All Over the World playing on it, all stuff like that. But it had a tingly, shaking feeling. I know we lost, but going to that game, it was just a anticipation, expectation, and it was on the telly as well. And it was just such an amazing atmosphere. And even Fulham fans to this day still say to Millwall fans, I know we beat you, but you created that day one of the best atmospheres I've ever been to in a football ground. And I'm sitting here now, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because that game was and the build up to that game was amazing.
Well, if you wanted to manufacture, if you were writing the fixtures and you wanted to manufacture a perfect story, it was the lead up to that game, wasn't it? It was, like I say, was it 14 or 15 unbeaten?
Yeah.
Millwall making the charge. I dare say it was a Friday night, wasn't it? And a bank holiday weekend. I dare say a few Millwall fans might have taken the afternoon off work and might have had a few adult beverages from what I saw on the drive in. But as well, if you want, I mean, I love narrative in football as well, and to take the working class, and even the way the two teams played, Millwall were very direct and strong in the tackle. Good side though, really good side. And they're this working class East London club against, Fulham, who were really very slick and, played a different way, a bit slower than Millwall, but again, very good team that got promoted. And you've got East versus West, you've got parachute payments versus, you've got rich versus poor, essentially in championship terms. Brilliantly set up. And I mean, you mentioned my long-suffering missus. I managed to get her along to that game, and we've all been there of trying to persuade our missus or our partner or whoever to come along and enjoy the football. And it was a bit scary going in, I must admit. London derby, very, very loud. But in terms of that atmosphere, when you're with a kind of non-football fan, and I'm saying to her, I've never heard anything this loud. And I can't remember. I'm going to say it was Jake Cooper, because he always used to, do well from corners. I remember you hitting the bar after 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes or something, and the meal after that is the loudest thing I've ever heard in a football ground. It was just, and it's almost kind of poetic that you did lose, because Millwall and teams like Millwall and teams like Ipswich they're the underdogs, and that's your fighting spirit. And of course, the end of the story is that the rich West London team are gonna with the 17-year-old England kid who's gonna go and sign for Spurs for 30 million quid. Of course, they're gonna win in the end, but it's the fight, isn't it? Yeah. It's the fight, and punching upwards and punching above your weight, and that was tremendous. And I always say to people about atmospheres, and that ground particularly is the right size to hold the sound in, isn't it? Sometimes, even at huge stadiums like Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday, sometimes a bit of the sound, they're both very loud, but sometimes a bit of the sound escapes, and it was just
you talk
balmy
stuff like
evening.
that, and I remember seeing, I think it was a Wolves game. I think it was one of their Champions League games this season. They got flashing lights, they got flares going off, they got banging things going on. I'm thinking, we can do that with our mouths. We don't need, don't need all these pyrotechnics and flashing lights. We just create it on our own. And you're talking about the Mill. When we played Manchester United in the FA Cup final in 2004, it's a famous statement, and I think Roy Keane's mentioned it a couple of times since. Half the when Manchester United got the trophy, we waited around to see it. But I'd say about 80% of the Millwall fans stayed behind, watched Manchester United get the trophy, were still singing, were still dancing, were still jumping up and down. And Roy Keane turned around, I think it was to Paul Scholes, tapped him on the shoulder and went, have a look at that. Have a look at that. Half the Manchester United crowd had gone home. They were probably thinking, we were always going to beat Millwall.
Be back next year, yeah.
Yeah. But we were there having our party, having our day out. Our final was beating Sunderland in the semi-final. We know that. It was brilliant. Absolutely. Driving back home was
that would Mick McCarthy have been managing Sunderland then?
Yes, he was.
I think he wasn't he? Marcus Stewart was playing up front for him, yeah.
Yeah, and what's his name? Got sent off. I can't remember his name. Anyway, when Dennis Wise was in the midfield, and Dennis Wise and the dearly parted Ray Wilkins was our manager. Oh, what a team that was! That's what I'm saying. Roy Keane turned around and said, "Their supporters, they're still making noise. They've just been beat 3-0." And that's what epitomised Millwall the way we are, and the fans we are.
Well, and I know people have fun with the Mill chant, but I think it's actually really important because we've been talking about identity. Who else has that chant?
No one.
No one.
Clubs have tried to nick the "No One Likes Us," a few in America and a few younger teams, like smaller teams, but that's synonymous with us. But the Mill and EIO have always been
It's part of the identity, and I think that is the alluring thing about the club. And yeah, I'm gonna say it again. Just as I went to, I think I was definitely at the Cardiff game. I'm looking at these fixtures. I tell you what, I was at the Reading game. You won away at the Madejski, and there must have been 3,000 or 4,000 Millwall fans travelled along to that one, and there was a real sense at that one that there was something in the air, and you won 2-0, really good performance, and I think it just built up from there with me and Millwall,
yeah. You didn't go many times next season, but I think you've been quite a few. You've been about 3 or 4 this season, haven't you?
Yeah, I think you've done quite. No, actually,
we've been a bit hit and miss this day. I know we're in 8th position this year, but I've been watching on Sky on the little half-hour segments you get on the Championship at the moment. They're showing a lot of the games because they obviously on a Saturday afternoon after the games are played, they then show the extended highlights, and they're showing those again on Sky Sports at the moment. And we were very up and down. We've just managed to win a couple. We've not had a run as such this season. We've just been there or thereabouts, and now we've been slowly creeping back up again.
Absolutely.
I've just watched before this morning. I was just watching the Preston game, and we won 1-0 up there, but that was a ground out result because Gary Rowell. I'll move on to Gary and Neil Harris now then. And
yeah, I was going to say actually, Gary, I was lucky enough to be at a couple of important Millwall games because I was at the home defeat to QPR, and and I remember doing my review, and one of the Millwall fan sites clipped me kind of saying something that seemed to resonate with the Millwall fans, in that the Neil Harris team I saw in 2017-18 didn't give a crap who they were playing against. They just went and attacked them. They went and pressed them, and if the team was better, they'd lose. But in the main, as the results show, they won a lot of games. And then I rock up to this QPR game, and I'm like, look, 3-5-2, and so he's clearly matching up, trying to stop, what QPR were doing. And I just felt that was a big change in the mentality of, it wasn't we don't care who we're playing. It was, I'm worried we're going to get, knocked over by QPR here. So we're going to match up. And I thought that was key, and that did get picked up on. And then I was at the Luton game, which got a bit tasty outside. I'm sure you were there probably.
Yeah.
And that was Harris's last game. So
that was a shock, because that was on the Wednesday, wasn't it? And then he resigned on the Thursday. But you could see the end was coming. I know he was getting his. Everyone was getting a little bit upset, and unfortunately, a few people did get a little bit personal. But if you could see even the season before, that 17-18 season was obviously his pinnacle. Obviously, getting promoted the season before, the 17-18 season was fantastic. Getting found out again in 18-19 when everyone found out how he was going to play, because obviously it was a long ball all the time. And then obviously this season, with the start of the season, it started to go pear-shaped again. And as much as I was upset and shed a tear that he'd gone, because obviously the legend that he is, Gary's come in and has been a breath of fresh air with probably 95% of the same players in the squad. He's doing things differently with them.
And Gary, sorry to interrupt, just quickly, about the way Harris went. It was done in the most Millwall way possible, wasn't it?
Yeah. He could never get sacked. He had to do it himself.
And the fans weren't happy, but they told him, which they do to players who aren't pulling their weight. No one cried. No one cried about it. No one threw their toys out the pram. He knew that for his legacy and being the all-time top scorer, that was the right time. And now, neither party's got issues with the other. It was Harris is a Millwall great. He did a great job. It was poor. We told him, and he manned up and went. It's the most Millwall way it can possibly be done, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And can I just take issue with one more thing you said? You said you got found out in 2018-19. I just want to stand up for your club a little bit, and this is a constant rant of mine. The fact that teams like Millwall, who come up from League One, have to compete against three teams who are given 45 million quid parachute money each year, is they work miracles to be finishing as high as eighth. And it's been proven in this lockdown with Rick Parry's comments as well, that the system is so skewed against Barnsley or Luton or Millwall, or look at Ipswich, who tried year after year to stay inside FFP. They didn't sell a stadium to themselves. They didn't sell a training ground to themselves. They didn't open a taxi firm with no cabs. They didn't, sign Wayne Rooney and get 32 red to pay for it. It's, I think, as if you're a Millwall fan, there's got to be an understanding of financially it is so hard to compete against three teams being given 45 million quid down from the Premier League every year. So that always needs to be in the back of the conversation, doesn't it? With Millwall?
It does. And I do. That is actually one of my rants, and I hadn't really thought about that in what we were talking about. But you are 100,000,000% right. And
you've got no right to be anywhere near eighth if you look at it financially.
Well, even now,
it's done brilliantly.
Even now we are sitting in eighth, and we could be knocking on the door with the likes of Fulham again, Leeds, West Brom, three massive teams who like West Brom and Leeds. They've got their own area, they've got their own following. People say, Millwall have only got 13,000, 14,000, but we live in a city that's got Arsenal, Chelsea, QPR, West Ham, etc. around us, and Tottenham and around us. Big clubs who are sucking obviously from us as well. If we were the only club in London, yes, we'd fill a 60,000 seater stadium every week, but we're not that club. But we are growing. We are trying to get more people in. We are growing our stadium in the next couple of years. And John Berylson, I don't know if you heard his interview, maybe if you want to, on the Millwall website the other day, he talks very cleverly, exactly what you just said about the parachute payments. They've got to go. They should have went 5-10 years ago, in my opinion, like you say. They are unfair to the Championship. It does weigh heavily on the Premiership-style favourite teams coming down to try and get them back up again. I don't even know where parachute payments come from. I think it's the most ridiculous idea ever. Anyway,
Gary, I've discussed this with Kieran Maguire, the finance expert who knows way more about it than me. And he argues it reasonably well, and it's always good to see both sides in an argument. They are necessary in order that there's not the massive cliff edge between the Premier League TV money and the Championship. The issue I have, and the issue that Millwall fans I think should have, is just the chasm in the distribution of the fact that 3 teams get 40 million, and then the next season they get 30 million, and the next season they get 15. Millwall, if they're up in the Championship those 3 seasons, they'll get 12 million across the 3 seasons. They get 4.65 million per year. So it's not the fact that they pay them; it's the giant difference in between them. But parachute payments are voted for by Premier League teams, and the point Kieran made to me is, what if you want them out? You either need Rick Parry to really go at the Premier League and the Championship to stand up to them, or you need Premier League clubs to vote to have less money, which is just never going to happen. The big issue I've got, Gary, is when they went from 4 years to 3 years. When they were 4 years, it was still a big advantage, but it was less. When they got squashed into 3 years, I think that was 2015, 16. It was the year that Newcastle and Norwich, I think I've got my years right. I'm possibly a year out with that. But when they went down to 3 years is when they really, really got skewed. And basically anyone that didn't have them, unless you had Chris Wilder in charge, a brilliant manager on a run or something. I know there's teams that buck the trend, but as I always say, just because some teams don't use the advantage doesn't mean the advantage is not there. If you put me 500 meters ahead of you in a running race and I stand there and showboat for the first 30 seconds, I'm going to waste the advantage, aren't I? But it doesn't mean I didn't have the advantage in the first place. And if you beat me, that doesn't mean that the advantage wasn't there, which is the pathetic argument I hear about, Stoke aren't top of the league, so parachute payments are fair. Shut up. Do you know what I mean?
No, of course not. When you look at Stoke, you look at Huddersfield, 2 examples there. Or you can even look at Leeds. When they first came down from the Premier League, when they were getting their parachute payment, they ended up in the Championship. They ended up, Division 1. Because they were probably paying too high wages to, without being rude, no good players that have come from Europe, who is another argument of mine, who sat on the bench, rinsing wages and don't deserve a place in the team full stop anyway, and are still paying those on a 2-3 year contract to do nothing. And
Leeds was mental at that time. I remember there was a point where there was, I think it was something like 6 players who were at different clubs. They'd moved them on, but they were still paying them, because of the 3-4 year deals. I mean, that was a mighty fall from the Champions League. So that was an even higher grade of wages. If you equivalent that to today, that would be 100 grand a week players, the ones who play in the Champions League.
And look how long it's taken them. How long have they been out of the Premiership now?
Oh God. I mean, what we should say about Leeds, Gary, is that they do it the right way now. That, like you said, they've had no parachute payments for years. Obviously, they're a huge club who can generate huge revenues, and that's helpful to them. But why shouldn't they benefit from their amazing history and the amount of fans that they have? But they're one of the good guys at the moment, trying to do it inside FFP. And believe me, if they don't get up this year, they've kind of bet the farm on Bielsa, which you would, because he's a fantastic manager. But look at the 2 teams below them: West Brom, 2nd year parachute payment; Fulham, 1st year parachute payment. That's always going to be the way. Who's chasing them? So it's a long-standing rant of mine, but just the success. And I mean, look at Preston in 6th. I mean, Forest haven't had parachutes, but Forest is all Millwall fans would admit a club like Forest is it's a storied, it's a big club, isn't it? And then you get teams like Brentford and Preston who've done it the right way with recruitment to buck the trend. And you would say Millwall's success in 17-18 was more tactical. It was more to do with we're going to give you trouble on the pitch, and I don't care if you've got more money than us. See if you can beat us, because we're going to be quicker on all the restarts. We're going to be more well drilled than you. We're going to press higher up the pitch. We've got a good front two. That was how Millwall did it in 17-18.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so one thing I wanted to do, and I didn't realise this until I was watching some old Bart videos the other day, that when you were playing in your, I think it was a playoff semi-final against Norwich, Bart was obviously in your team there as well, and how good he was. And he is, as we were saying, Ipswich and Millwall very much in the same vein. What a player. Sorry, but what a player. Millwall have had some great goalkeepers over the time. Tony Warner, King, etc., to name a few.
Casey
Keller, of course. And Bartosz Białkowski, I think, now we've signed him properly. I think we've signed him on a 3-year deal now, after all the incidents about his knee and stuff like that, which, God almighty, he's played every game this season, bar 1 or 2. I don't see any injury in there. I'm sure you didn't when he was playing for you
this year, right?
Exactly. But all I can say is thank you very much for a great goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's an interesting story with Bart, isn't it? Because so at Ipswich, he's obviously the 3-time Player of the Year, and he was the perfect goalkeeper for a Mick McCarthy team, where you're going to play a low block. He can see everything. He's not expected to pass out from the back or things of that nature. And Bart himself would admit that he's a top-level championship goalkeeper. But if he was asked to, go and we'll talk about what he was asked to do under Paul Hurst and Paul Lambert for a short time, that wouldn't be his thing. It would be, no, I'll play in a team where the manager has got a sound defensive mind, like Mick McCarthy or Gary Rowett, and I will. And this goalkeeping is quite simple. All you want from your keeper is to save the shots that he should save. If someone's going to curl one into the corner, or your team concedes a big chance of 1-on-1, you don't expect the keeper to save it, do you? No. And what you then start to get with players like Bart is he'll save some of the more difficult ones as well. So if you protect Bart, he is a brilliant goalkeeper. And unfortunately, what happened at Ipswich is that Paul Hurst came in, and I think a lot of it was kind of political, in that Hurst tried to take on Luke Chambers, Cole Skews and Bart, the senior players there, and did it in a bit of a sort of ham-fisted way. And remember, you're following McCarthy, and if there's one thing McCarthy's good at, it's all football players love Mick McCarthy. He has them in his pocket. He's obviously a brilliant people person when it comes to football. And Bart was dropped 90 minutes before the local derby against Norwich in September. Yeah, September, having been the 3-time Player of the Year, and not told beforehand that he was going to be dropped. That was a big problem for him. What wasn't a big problem for him, it was that he was the one player that Ipswich decided to keep when Hurst came, and that Waghorn was sold for 5 million, Webster was sold for 3 million, or what have you, and Bart was given the contract that that a top end championship player would deserve. So all of a sudden, his confidence is gone, his form's gone. Hurst is splitting the centre backs, and Paul Lambert was at first to begin with, and Bart's not got that security that a Mick McCarthy defence had in front of him. His confidence is gone, and Millwall fans would be amazed, like us Ipswich fans were. He had a really, really bad season in 2018-19, really poor. He would admit it. Lots of mitigating factors, yes, but his form went off a cliff. And then all of a sudden, you're in League One with a goalkeeper on, a decent whack of money, and all of a sudden, this 3-time Player of the Year actually becomes a liability on the balance sheet. It's like, you cannot justify paying this guy that much money in League One. Obviously, you know him now, very popular guy, very stand-up guy. He'd do anything for you. You can just tell with Bart, can't you? He's
a rock. He's
a good stand-up bloke, isn't he?
I think if it was, without saying the wrong type of thing, if there was a fight going on the other end of the pitch, he'd run the length of the pitch to help break it up as well.
Absolutely.
Get involved.
But he wouldn't throw any punches, would he? He'd break it up. He's exactly that type of guy, isn't he? But so yeah, then we had the little back and forth, which was typical Ipswich, wasn't it? Where the bid or the deal was done, and then the medical, and then all of this, that, and the other. And let's be honest, Millwall pulled Ipswich's pants down on that. Whoever was on the Millwall side of the table played a blinder there, because the initial loan and then that got converted in January. And then there was a ridiculous thing where the recall clause was massively in Millwall's favour as well. Don't know who signed off on that, because it was like a week into the transfer window, and all the Ipswich fans are going, why is that not on the last day of the transfer window? That's stupid. That completely puts all the, when you've got a player on a high wage, that put all the power in. And this isn't a criticism of Millwall. They played the negotiation really, really well and got an excellent goalkeeper, and all the things I said. You've got a manager with sound defensive mind who's not going to ask Bart to be running to the edge of his area and playing right foot, left foot, and pinging it out to the fullbacks. His job is to save shots, and Rowett gives Bart the assurance we're not going to concede 5 one-on-ones per game. So if you do your job, you'll keep clean sheets, and we're not going to expose you. And he's thriving, and he's likely to be your player of the year, isn't he? Well, no, Wallace will probably be your player of the year, but he'll be up there, won't he?
Oh, definitely. Like, he might win the kids' player of the year or something like that, but he is understandably well the rock that we needed at the back. And you were saying about playing left and right passes out to the fullbacks. Gary Rowett's even got the likes of Hutchinson and Cooper now bombing up the wings, like as our aforementioned Sheffield United manager earlier.
Yeah, right. Well, there's three at the back's very much in trend. But the point I was making, Gary, is there was times at Ipswich where Paul Lambert was trying to split. This system, you split the centre backs, you drop the midfielder in between, and the fullbacks go high. And Bart was expected to be dropping balls 40, 50 yards out to the fullbacks. And fair enough,
not him.
Kiko Casilla can do it for Leeds. Yeah, fine, we get it. But a lot of these were just dropping out of play, and fans just felt sorry for Bart, because it'd be I can play the piano fairly well, but if you ask me to play trad jazz and stick me on a stage, I'm gonna embarrass myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, indeed. So going back onto Garrett Rowett, then, do you think he's the type of manager that a good fit for Millwall?
I do. Yeah. I was a bit sus. I thought, how's this going to work out? At the
I was shocked when he first come in. I'm thinking, okay, you've had a bit of a bounce around, a bit of a mercenary, a few clubs. I know it went well at Derby, and then he went to Stoke. It didn't work out, but that's the parachute payment again. Obviously, he's a guy who likes to work in a certain situation. Having all this money, obviously, maybe he went to his head a little bit. Maybe he prefers working in more of a lockdown environment.
Well, and in terms of getting Ryan Woods into Millwall, it worked out quite well, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
obviously they don't want him. Up at Stoke, do they? But no, my criticism of Rowett when he was Derby manager was the team too cautious for the ability of the players on the pitch? That was my only question with him. But when you're managing a team like Millwall, and I keep saying that through this podcast, this is not, I don't want to come across as patronising, but Millwall against Derby financially, like you just said, and against Stoke is a total mismatch in this division, isn't it? His job is very different at Millwall, and we saw it at Burton and at Birmingham that he's one of these managers. He's almost better when he's got less money. Do you know what I mean?
Completely agree.
But yeah, I'm not surprised to see the way that they play in respects of, look, a lot of draws, let's not get beaten. But what I am surprised about is the tune he's got out of Jed Wallace. I did not think that it would be Rowett that would have Wallace, in the type of form. And I mean, maybe Wallace was always going to develop, and certain players, it doesn't matter who the manager is, does it? They're just gonna go for it, and they're just gonna, But that's the one thing that has surprised me. But no, really, really, really impressed.
You say about Wallace, I was actually, for the last 10 games of last season, very frustrated with Wallace because he couldn't beat the first man on a cross. He was running into brick walls all the time. But this is the thing you don't sometimes know. He was playing with an injury. Again, he's dropped off a little bit, but I've just found out in the last couple of days he's now playing with an injury as well, and he hasn't been training as much. So you sometimes don't realise that these players are nursing something sometimes, and they're just going out there for the benefit of the team and because they want to play every minute, that sometimes they aren't at their best. And obviously, this break will have helped get players like Jed back to fitness, Frankie Fielding back to fitness, Ben Thompson back to fitness. And you can only see teams pushing on now in this last 9 games. But you're saying about Jed Wallace, I am surprised because, as I say, at the end of last season, I would quite happily have taken 5-6 million for Jed and moved on. Now I wouldn't let him go out of the club for at least 15-20.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
And kids,
I think as well, Gary, if you think about the two managers as well, if you're Jed Wallace, and you're playing for Neil Harris, you're going to play in a 4-4-2. You're going to play wide. Remember, you're going to have those fullbacks bombing on, but primarily as well, a lot of work he had to do would be, right, we're pressing high, so you've got to get after the fullback. You've got to push that midfield back. Whereas when you're playing for Gary Rowett and you're Jed Wallace, you're sure that there's going to be a solid base behind you. And, sometimes we've seen a 3 up top and Wallace has pretty much got, he'll be off to one side and he can play either. Pretty much got a little bit of space and freedom, get up and support the front guy. It's probably quite a good match for him to play with a manager who, I hate to mention his name, but Neil Warnock was always good at this. He'd provide a solid base, but he would then say to his creative players, I know Tarab was very good, but even like someone like Hoylett at Cardiff, he'd say to him, no, you go and play. We got it sorted behind you. It may not be pretty, but we're not going to let many goals in, and you go ahead and play. And
Hoylett, obviously, I'd have in my team every day of the week, and I'm just hoping Neil might let us have him one day. But he's pushing on to the end of his career. But you say about Warnock, he was probably the best manager Millwall never had. He would have been a great fit at Millwall for what you've just said, like letting people do their jobs. And I know he offered his services a couple of times and we didn't take it up on it, but I like Neil. I don't know what your feelings are because I know I touched on maybe something there, but he was always the best manager Millwall, in my opinion, never had.
Yeah, no, he's a hell of a manager, isn't he?
Do you think he can have a job?
I mean, obviously, it reminds me of Kiss. Every time Kiss do a tour, it's the farewell tour, isn't it? And he seems to have retired about 8 times now. Knowing what a kind of mischievous, sort of character he is. No doubt he'll drop in. He'll drop in somewhere. I like him personally. I know some people have issues where, I don't know, a player might have got injured playing against the Warnock team and they'll say, oh no, he was told to go out and stick one on the guy or whatever. And I'm sure we've all seen the serves you right for what happened with Muscat clip, haven't we?
Sure have.
which is hilarious. But as a studier of football and going to watch games, I'm fascinated by watching, because you can watch a Bielsa team on one week play this pure, beautiful stuff.
Look what they done to us. 2-0 down after 20 minutes, and then they annihilated us for the next 70.
Yeah, he's brilliant to watch those Leeds teams. But then you can go and watch Neil Warnock, and I genuinely, this happened. I watched Cardiff play at Derby, where they would win a throw-in in their own half, throw it 30 yards down the line to win another throw-in, so then Gunnarsson or Morrison could lob that throw-in into the box. And I love seeing the different. I can understand, the ball's only in play for 40 minutes of the game or whatever ridiculous stats you can get. But my argument is that you take Bielsa? Can Bielsa beat Warnock? And can Warnock beat Bielsa? And I love those. I love those clashes in. You've got this one extreme style on one end and then this extreme on the other end. But it's. I think God. Well, but let me ask you this: with Ipswich Town's squad in League One this year and their budget compared to the others, if they'd had Neil Warnock managing them, where would they be in the table right now?
Probably top.
Where exactly? There you go. So
yeah. Just to go off piste a little bit, what do you think of Lambert? I like Lambert as a manager. I know he's had his ups and downs. I know he was at Norwich, but what are your thoughts on him? Is it because of the Norwich connection that you just won't take to him?
No, it's not to do with the Norwich connection. I think Ipswich fans. I mean, you'll remember when Lambert was announced, the first game was actually at Millwall, and you did us 3-0. I mean, we were absolutely terrible. In fact, Bart made a big mistake in that game, didn't he? And Ryan Leonard lobbed him from.
He did, and I think that was one of the things that people were saying when we tried to sign him. Well, look how he performed against us.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. But you'll remember that literally all the game was Paul Lambert is a blue, he hates Norwich. So I think the Ipswich fans kind of found it quite funny that literally Norwich is, and you can say it by matter of fact, one of Norwich's top 3 managers of all time is now managing Ipswich. Whereas the idea of Alf Ramsey or Bobby Robson, I'm getting a bit, or George Burley managing Norwich, no. Do you know what I mean? So I think a few Ipswich fans found that quite funny. There is not enough evidence so far for me to be convinced. That could change. I hope it changes. But he's been a bit wishy-washy tactically and changed ideas. And we all know nowadays that what you're up against with, tactically with managers, particularly if you want to be in the Championship, is, it's not just 4-4-2 and double up on the fullbacks and get the ball in the box and score from set plays anymore. There's a few managers who still try and do that, but you have to be really on it and have a really strong system. And, that's the only reason Millwall were able to, you talked about 17-18, finish as high as they did, is that work had been going for 2.5, 3 years already, hadn't it? And through the playoffs. And, so all I need to see from Lambert is a direction that we're going to stick to. And unfortunately, it's all been a downward trajectory yet. Obviously, as a football fan, I want my team to win. So I'm on his side and I'm always behind my team's managers, but I just need to see a bit more evidence that they're going in the right direction.
Fair enough. And I know from Millwall's time bouncing up and down from the Championship and the First Division, not an easy division to get out of.
No.
Especially the likes of Sunderland in there, Portsmouth in there now, and the likes of you guys in there. And the surprise package this year, Wickham. If it goes to, which I'm going to get onto now, is what's the new thing, points per game thing they can do?
Yeah, so they're voting. It's either going to be that the EFL clubs are going to continue and we're going to play the games safely with all the players being tested and not risking their health or the families, etc., behind closed doors.
I'd rather sit here and watch the Championship finish. It's going to be strange behind closed doors because, as you're saying, Millwall's got that atmosphere. But
yeah. Well, do you subscribe to the theory that a team like Millwall would be more affected without those fans, pushing them on and
yes
players.
No, but these players train every day. They have behind closed doors friendly every day, so they should be used to playing with no fans. I know it gives you that buzz. I know when I've done amateur dramatics in the past. I know when I've done my rehearsals, my directors have always said to me, "Why on show week are you always like 20%, 30% of your game better?" Because I react to the crowd. So in that respect, I don't know. So maybe half the team might be like that and half might not be. So it'd be interesting. But on a personal scale, yes, I can see where they're coming from. But on the other side of it, I can also say is players train with no crowds. Players have behind closed door friendlies a lot. And I know Gary Rowett's obviously trying to get 1 or 2 behind closed door friendlies to get the match situation. He mentioned it the other day. But it's your job. I now work from home with no one around me apart from my 2 kids and my wife. But I can do my job in a crowded environment to doing my job in a situation sat at home.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
why can't Those guys, you get what I mean?
Players are funny, aren't they? On the one hand, they say, when things are going well, they say that the crowd motivates them and it's really important. And when they're getting booed, they say, they're not listening anyway. So they'll. But I suppose there's the argument. Yes, they can at Millwall, that's for sure. But I suppose there's the argument that it is a level playing field-ish because no one's going to have any fans, and like you say, all the games are going to be played out in that manner. So, assuming, I would have thought that there'd be enough. What should we say without libeling anyone? There'll be enough gentle force being put on Championship clubs to vote to play on from those lovely friends we've got in the Premier League. So I'm fairly confident that, I'll put it this way, if the Championship votes to cancel, then they'll kind of get what they deserve. And I think we might even see the promotions and relegations and it will be chaos. So,
exactly.
less so in League 2 and League 1, but
there's two bigger clubs involved, even coming down from the Premiership to, I don't even know how the conversation even started about when the Premier League started saying they're going to stop relegation. This is, I'm sorry, but you've played what?
Yeah,
40,
to be fair, Gary, that's come from the clubs, hasn't it? That the FA and the Premier League have been fairly good in saying no. The FA especially, the FA have got rights as a special shareholder, and they did actually come out. And again, we don't know if that's completely briefed by the Premier League, and the FA is the puppet with the Premier League's hand up its back because it's the cash cow for all of their members. But that's me speculating, but it would make some sense if that was what was happening. But they've certainly come out. I think it's the clubs. I mean, your friends at West Ham immediately on the first day saying, no, cancel it, done, no relegations. Our friends at Norwich saying, if the Championship aren't playing on, why should we be relegated? But you're right, Aston Villa, West Ham down there, Norwich, some big clubs.
There are some, Watford.
Yeah, not so sure there. That would be cruel to Watford fans, but
a lot of my family are Watford fans for my sins.
Oh, I didn't mean to offend them, but compared to an Aston Villa,
I feel sorry for them at the moment because they got to the FA Cup final last year. I was there with them. I got given a ticket.
That was uncomfortable, wasn't it?
It was a fantastic day out, and like I said about Millwall being the FA Cup final, we had the day out and it was brilliant. And their final was of course the semi-final. Coming back, I can't remember, they played in the semi-final, but they were 2-0 down, weren't they, and come back to win 3-2, and that was a fantastic day for them. But it was brilliant. I had a fantastic day, but I think even Pep was sat on the bench saying stop now, weren't they?
Yeah, right.
But so honestly, you think the Championship, First Division should finish, Second Division's already sorted itself, Premier League's going, and will we find out tomorrow, or have you got to wait?
Oh God. Who knows? So the last EFL statement was unfortunately probably the worst one we've had from them, because I felt all the way along that the Premier League have actually been, behind the EFL, but now it seems to have switched over. And the last EFL statement said that we will still listen to your ideas. Well, it actually said we've listened to your ideas and we're ignoring all of them, but we'll still listen to your ideas up till June the 2nd, which would be Tuesday. Why? I don't know what anyone's going to come up with, why they wouldn't have come up with their best idea already. And but I think they just, to warn against legal stuff, they're really wanting to, right, you put your proposals in, and then if you sue us, if you didn't propose what you'd said, then etc. Yeah. And then there was a June the 8th date as well for final vote. So I'm afraid it's going to rumble on a little bit longer. But my hope is that, if you think about a normal football season, the playoff finals are not that long before the Champions League finals, are they?
No.
And if the big boys get the Champions League sorted out, that ain't happening until the end of August, is it? Especially if quarantines are going to be lifted and the French teams are actually going to be allowed to play and all of that red tape has got to be gone through. Then it's likely that the Champions League final won't happen until at least week 3 or 4 of August, you would think, unless they do some kind of tournament finish, in which case that would kind of give the Championship clubs, until a similar time, until week 2 or 3 of August, to play 9 games and then 3 playoff rounds.
So you think maybe the first week of July Championship start again?
Gary, I don't know. I mean, look, they're doing the test.
I just want it back.
Yeah, I know. They're doing the testing, and there's been more. It looks like the results are getting better, and they tested the League 2 guys, haven't they? It's just the League.
I thought that was gone.
I believe. I could be wrong about that, but
didn't the Premiership completely have zero? I think
they did on
zero yesterday.
On yesterday's figures that they possibly. Right, here we go. So this was. Oh no, I stand corrected. That was the. Sorry, that I got that wrong. That was Premier League, 0 positive results from 1,130 samples, but they've definitely done testing in the Championship, because we got the results through from the Hull players, didn't we? And
yes,
Bennett at Blackburn was positive, and I'm sure because Jayden Stockley, the Preston forward, has tested positive as well, and they're all asymptomatic. They're all saying, "I feel absolutely fine. I wouldn't have even known that I'd had it." But
yeah,
I suppose they're super fit young men, aren't they? But
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if they're already training, it's looking like contact training would need to be announced. Let's play complete fantasy and say it gets voted through on June the 8th or the day after June the 8th or what have you. Add 3 weeks onto that. Yeah, you're looking at the start of July. God, it's tight, isn't it?
Do they really need 3 weeks though? Because they're already back, aren't they? So maybe they are.
Possibly not. No, possibly
they might be thinking they're voting maybe for start in a week's time after that.
Yeah, I think the argument always is that
stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, football's so, you can train to run a 100-metre sprint. It's the same every time, but no football player does the same thing in any given minute of a football match in terms of changing direction and who's which 6'4" Matt Smith size lump is gonna bump into them, or Jake Cooper, or whatever. Or are they gonna have to go 50-50 with a Hutchison type figure, where you don't know what's going to happen, do you? So it's, I don't know. It could be a case of, as well, if I'm Rick Parry as well, do I not have the right to say, sorry lads, your clubs have faffed about for 6 weeks now. You're back in 3 weeks, whether you like it or not. Tough.
Well, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Rick Parry's actually being a shining figure, and hopefully he can drive.
He's not done badly, has he? Yeah.
No, he can drive some change, and I do feel like I've been speaking to a few of my people I work with recently. It's a massive world change at the moment. Things like one of the companies I work with, they had 9 people in their building in London just to fix the printers. You know what I mean? Do we really need, in the context of do they really need to be on £400,000 a week, whatever? Change has got to be made. And
the Facebook chap, Zuckerberg, is saying, oh, this is going to lead to, if people working from home way, way more now. If we don't have to pay, like you were saying, your Leadenhall Street in London, your $100,000 a month or whatever rent on that. If you don't have to pay that, then
no, exactly.
Why would you if people can now work from home? It'd be very interesting. But you're right. Now is the time for Rick Parry to really, he can do something now. As soon as we get back into how it was, it's going to be very hard to change stuff. And if good clubs and unique clubs like Millwall are going to have a chance of getting into getting that Premier League dream, or even getting into the playoffs or what have you, then it needs to just be a little bit fairer so they're not going against. You were at that West Brom game. I was at the West Brom game. The one in Millwall West Brom in the wind, and. Yeah, okay, Millwall beat Leeds earlier in the season. Was a bit of a dubious red card in that game, even Millwall fans would admit.
Oh, I'll admit that.
Would admit that one. But in the West Brom game, you could see, and they're bringing, I don't know, but they can bring Charlie Austin on with 20 minutes to go. Yeah. And if you're a Millwall fan, you're like, what do we do? Do you know what I mean?
I know,
how
exactly.
Can we, that guy's probably on, £1 million a season or what have you. What's the Millwall transfer record?
1.5 million.
There you go. So, there'll be, what are West Brom playing Pereira, the number 10?
Well,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was 1.5 million a season. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's hard, isn't it? Really hard.
It is hard. Well, I think we've covered everything with quite good detail there.
There we go, Gary.
Thank you so much for.
No, you're very welcome. If I can just say to the Millwall fans,
of course,
it's a great club. It's a really unique club, and we're in no way of blowing smoke. If I didn't like you, I would say. But thank you to all the Millwall fans who, whenever I show up, say hello and give their opinion and, suggest, smarten me up on what's been happening. And to the Millwall fans, it's not like that at every club where, people are, all right, mate, how you doing? I like your show. By the way, our left back's crap. Or what? Do you know what I mean? I'm not picking on, whoever's playing with Murray Wallace, would it be playing left back for Millwall? But I've really enjoyed going there, and I've been made really, really welcome. And it is a unique club, and it's not like that at all clubs. And there are clubs that I've been to as many times as I've been to Millwall, and I don't feel that way. So it's a great club. It really is.
Thank you very, very much, Ben, and appreciate your words. Brilliant. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Mill.
I hope you enjoyed the chat between Ben and Gary like I did. If you have someone you might like us to interview, give your reasons on an email addressed to nolutalkin@gmail.com. That's NOLUTALKIN without a G. nolutalking@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and we will play out a clip from a song that Ben produced in 2018, History of the Premier League musical tribute.
Money, he's got more. Sky didn't start the football, but they gave you fun days with their Super Sundays. Sky didn't start the football, but the Premier League became as big as Jesus. Gareth Bale, Yaya, Tiki-Taka Silva, Vincent, Mario, Sergio Aguero, Suarez, Ozil, Rodgers and the Fatal Four, Jose, back again, Eden Hazard, Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy off the scale, Leicester City fairy tale, Jurgen Klopp, Gegenpress, Pochettino, Mahrez, Conte, 3-4-3, Kante wins another league, Guardiola century, what else is there